On today's Solo Sunday News, we've got two huge WrestleMania 41 matches that are being discussed, a backstage update on Corey Graves' WWE contract, a major return takes place on AEW Collision, and there's some new details on AEW's handling of talent who are leaving the company. Hello and welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling, the Solo Sunday News. Myself, Andrew Pollard. I hope you're well, I hope you're good, and I hope things are going as well as possible for you this weekend. If they're not, I really do hope they turn around ASAP for you. Right, let's get into wrestling news, and let's start with WrestleMania 41. Of course, with the Royal Rumble only a week away, we are soon to find ourselves on the patented road to WrestleMania. Some would say you're already on that road. But while we're all kind of, as wrestling fans, you're mapping out your WrestleMania cards, there's now word on a couple of matches that WWE has recently been discussing for this year's Showcase of the Immortals. Now, this comes from Fightful Select, and those matches are Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair and Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair. Now, that Tiffy and Charlotte match, that one, I wouldn't say that would come as much of a surprise. Most fans predicted that this one could well take place at WrestleMania 41. Stratton herself has made it clear, very, very clear in various interviews that she wants to wrestle Charlotte Flair at some point. That she also wants to wrestle Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania at some point. And I think I even saw one interview where she essentially credited Charlotte for being her inspiration for getting into pro wrestling in the first place. So, of course, the past couple of weeks, the past couple of SmackDowns have seen vignettes air promoting Charlotte Flair's imminent WWE return. The most recent vignette, of course, that saw the Queen declaring herself for the Women's Royal Rumble. And as is par, of course, with Charlotte Flair, whenever she returns, a title shot is never far away. To coin a phrase from the Solid Monster, shout out to Jason and the Solid Monster Sounds Off, a great podcast. Go and check that out when you're done here, of course. While others may have their Money in the Bank contract, it often appears with Charlotte that it's like a Charlotte in the Bank deal, as in turn up and immediately get yourself a title shot whenever you really fancy one. Now, the question is, does Charlotte Flair win the Royal Rumble to get her that shot at Tiffany Stratton in the WWE Women's title at WrestleMania, or could that Rumble win go to Bianca Belair in order to set up Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania 41? As it stands, Rhea is a Raw talent. Bianca Belair is a SmackDown talent. And while that could change as part of the ongoing transfer window, one other way to put Bianca in a position to challenge for the opposing brand's top women's title, that would be to have her win the Royal Rumble. You also have to factor in that Bianca Belair is currently one half of the women's tag team champions, not to mention there is the whole situation of who attacked Jade Cargill. And whoever did attack Jade Cargill, one has to imagine they'll end up feuding with Jade. And right now, Naomi and Bianca seem to be the most logical attackers there. If it is Naomi rather than Bianca, though, who took out Jade Cargill, that does kind of free up Bianca to do something else at WrestleMania. And maybe that something else is going after Rhea Ripley, be that with a Royal Rumble win or winning the Elimination Chamber later on in the year. Of course, Rhea versus Bianca, that is something that many fans have long seen that as a WrestleMania match for somewhere down the line. There's been some great matches between the two over the years. There's been so many teases, nods, winks to like doing something massive with them at some point in time. And you think the two haven't had a televised singles match at least since TakeOver Portland, which was back in 2020? Was that 2020? Jeez, man, time is flying by. They were supposed to face off at Money in the Bank back in 2022. That was Bianca was the Raw Women's Champion. At that point in time, though, Rhea was forced out of that match due to injury and was replaced by Carmella. And speaking of Carmella, that nicely dovetails into our next story, which is Corey Graves and his current WWE contract status. Now, Corey has been in the news in recent weeks due to being unhappy at being moved to the NXT commentary desk, taken to Twitter, well, X. I will get used to that at some point, to vent about the move, about having your dream job. That's easy for me to say when I'm highly caffeinated on a Sunday morning. To have your dream job, as in being a wrestler, taken from you, only to then become great at a dream adjacent job, as in a commentator, and then be deemed not famous enough to be on Raw or SmackDown once the move to Netflix happened. Graves was then absent from the next episode of NXT, but he was back this week and was on great form, to be fair, as he usually is. Corey Graves is very good at his job. A very, very talented broadcaster. Still, many have speculated whether Corey Graves' social media activity, whether that was an attempt to get fired. And there's a little bit of an update on that from the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, where it was noted that Corey was not trying to get himself fired and that he's actually got 2 years left on his WWE contract. So, The bottom line seems to be that Corey Graves was simply venting some frustration, some very real frustration. We've all been there where, something doesn't go right at work or just in life general. You blow up a bit, you vent a bit, you rant a bit, then you take stock of things, step back from the situation, and you just kind of crack on again and get on with it. Also, there is the fact that Pat McAfee, I guess, comes and goes with WWE depending on his other commitments, notably College Game Day. So there is the chance of Corey stepping up to fill that role, although when Pat was absent from this week's Raw, just gone, it was Wade Barrett who was used instead as a replacement. But that still, it doesn't really resolve things for Corey Graves, even if he was in that role, because, basically he'd be a stopgap for Pat McAfee unless Raw or SmackDown decides to go with a 3-man commentary team, which that was reportedly the plan at one point in time ahead of the Netflix move. But for whatever reason, they've just gone with 2 on each show. It's Michael Cole and Pat McAfee on Raw, then it's Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett on SmackDown. Either way, Corey Graves was not trying to get fired, and he's tied down to WWE for at least the next couple of years. Right, switching gears from WWE to AEW, and last night's Collision. AEW Collision, it saw a huge, massive, mammoth return. Kind of. Yes, timeless Toni Storm is back, with Toni recently having won the Casino Gauntlet to win herself a shot at Mariah May and the AEW Women's title at Grand Slam Australia next month. This week's Collision saw a face-off between the two, and with Mariah putting a beating on the rookie Toni Storm. Now, Toni, of course, she reverted back to her previous gimmick in recent weeks, the classic rocker Toni Storm, and it was it appeared like she had some sort of amnesia. She was meeting people for the first time, wrestling people for the first time. She was happy to be there. She was happy to finally be signed to AEW. As revealed on Collision, though, oh boy, this was all a ruse, or the greatest performance of Toni Storm's career, as Toni revealed that she had been acting the whole time, and that she was indeed, yes, still timeless, promising to, she said, how did she phrase it? That Mariah May had come from Toni Storm's womb, and how Toni promised to put Mariah May back up her womb and spit her out, and then knock her certain body parts off. I'm not even sure if I can say that word on YouTube. So there we go. Use your imagination if you've not seen the segment. Either way, Toni Storm, timeless Toni Storm, has simply been playing her former self this entire time. It was all a trick. It was all a cunning ruse. It was timeless Toni playing the role of a lifetime and putting in the acting performance of a lifetime. And this was all sold, of course, with immense shock by Mariah May. Now, some fans had predicted that AEW would go this route with Toni and her supposed amnesia. For let's face it, the alternative, quite frankly, was to do something like, mirror Cactus Jack's amnesia in WCW back in 1993, was that? Yeah, which... that was rough, man. That was horrendous. Look, I am one of those who will always praise early 90s WCW. For me, it was way better than the peak NWO Monday Night Wars stuff. People always praise the NWO, the Monday Night Wars. When they think of WCW, they think of that period from 1996 onwards for a couple of years, and it was great. But for me, early WCW, early 90s WCW, it was far better. You had Surfer Sting, you had Vader as a monster, the Dangerous Alliance, Ron Simmons, Davey Boy Smith stopped in for a bit, Rick Rude was just a beast, Ricky Steamboat was back, the natural Dustin Rhodes, the odd appearance from Jushin Thunder Liger, which blew my tiny little brain back then, the Steiners, the Rise of Harlem Heat. The point being, I love that era of WCW and that version of Cactus Jack. Vader terrified young me, but in a very different way to Cactus Jack. Vader was just the imposing, dominant beast, this monster, whereas Cactus Jack was just nuts. He was just crazy. There was even the WCW magazine at the time, the comic book at the time, and even that was like Cactus Jack was just this unhinged lunatic. When Cactus and Vader had their feud in 1993, a very real concussion to Mick Foley, that led to a storyline where Cactus Jack was institutionalized, then he escaped, and then he had amnesia, and it was just ridiculously bad. But I'm going to stop going down that early 90s WCW rabbit hole too much, because you're not here for this, are you? So anyway, the point being, AEW has not taken the amnesia approach with Toni Storm, and she's now well and truly back to being timeless, ahead of facing Mariah May in Australia on February the 15th. Now, one final story for today's Solo Sunday News, and there's a little bit of new information on how AEW handles talent who they think are on their way out of the company. Now, AEW currently has Rey Fenix sitting at home to see out the rest of his contract. Absolute Ricky Starks is in that same position. Malachi Black is another who's either finished up with AEW already or imminently so. House of Black have now rebranded as the Hounds of Hell with Buddy, with Big Brody, and with Julia Hart. So they are very much moving on from the House of Black from Malachi Black. But in case you haven't guessed it, the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter that notes how AEW has changed its stance in recent months on how to handle talent who are leaving the company. In years gone by, wrestling promotions have often used those talents on TV, put over other talents. To job them out would be the phrase, I guess, or to give the rub to other talents is another way to look at it. You get some value out of those wrestlers while you still can. If you've got wrestler A, who's a big star with plenty of credit in the bank with the audience, but they're on their way out of the company, giving the upcoming wrestler B a big win over wrestler A, that could be a big deal and boost wrestler B's position on the card and with the company. However, AEW is now has been operating under a different approach to that, to the classic approach of wrestling promotions for decades. As you can see with your own eyes. The report here, though, from the Observer notes how Tony Khan, he instead prefers to just not use these talents, to keep them off TV, to let them sit at home until their contract is up, rather than give them any sort of presence on TV, even if that is simply to bring them TV to lose and to put others over. Now, this report, it lists Phoenix, it lists Ricky Starks, it lists Malachi Black, and it also mentions Miro as those who AEW expect to be done with the company when their existing deals are up, with all four potentially eyeing a move to WWE. Now, of course, for Malachi Black, that would be a return. For Miro, if that happened, that would be a return. And then, obviously, Phoenix and Starks, it's fresh waters, new waters for them. Now, this is quite the hot topic, of course. It has been quite the hot topic for months now. So let us know in the comments what you think. If you're AEW, is it better to use, say, a Ray Phoenix or a Ricky Starks on TV to put others over, to take some losses? You also have to think as well, doing that with a Phoenix or a Starks, that could also weaken the perception of them to casual fans, devalue them ahead of a WWE move, because then, they're viewed as a bit of a loser if they've been on TV losing all the time. Or do you agree with the approach of, just not using those talents whatsoever, keeping them permanently benched and sat on home for the remaining months of their deals? Let us know in the comments. It's always a fun topic. And also, as always, be nice in the comments. Don't be a dick. And with that, this has been WhatCulture Wrestling, the solo Sunday news with myself, Andrew Pollard. Be sure to check out this other exceptional video that's floated around here somewhere. Hey, it might even be one of our recent Royal Rumble lookbacks, which, if so, they're a lot of fun. But anyway, be well, be safe, and I will catch you next weekend.